Hello and welcome to Wineskins, a program featuring reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda. Our show is sponsored by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our show today, I will interview Nikki Yearling on campus ministry at Youngstown State University. We will also hear more about the conversion of St. Paul and the readings for this third Sunday in Ordinary Time. That and more on Wineskins. To tell us more about evangelization in the Diocese of Youngstown is Father Nick Shorey.
Since the beginning of this job that I began 5 years ago, namely evangelization and reconfiguration, I have published an article in the Exponent regarding either evangelization or reconfiguration. One of the articles that got the most response was recently published with respect to the shortage of priests. And I want to reiterate some of the facts from that article because it had such an impact on many of the people who read it. Presently in our diocese, there are 62 priests over the age of 70. 20 of them are active in some way. 22 priests are between the ages of 65 and 70, and of that group, 19 are active. 18 priests are between the ages of 60 and 64, and of that number, 16 are active. 18 are between the ages of 50 and 59, 17 are active. 11 priests are between the ages of 40 and 49. All of them are presently active. 7 priests are between the ages of 30 and 39, and all of those are active as well. With respect to ordination in the next few years, presently there will be no ordinations in 2016. Following in 2017, 2 men, in 18, none. In 2019, 3 will be ordained. In 2021, 4 will be ordained. And then in the following year, 2022, we have 2 men that potentially could be ordained. Those numbers could obviously change depending on those who stay or those who might come in to the seminary system between now and then. In that article, I reiterated that among the most important things that perhaps we can do regarding the shortage of priests in the diocese is certainly to pray for vocations. Jesus exhorts us in the gospel to pray for more laborers in the vineyard. We need to take that seriously and maybe move in our parishes toward what we call a culture of vocations. We can enthusiastically improve that culture of vocations by personally asking young men to consider priesthood. In some of our parishes, and we've talked about this before, is that we can welcome priests from foreign countries, international priests. We presently have a number of international priests serving in our diocese. That brings with it concerning issues, but nonetheless, those are not insurmountable. But we can also look to the idea of alternative forms of parish leadership. Presently, we are looking at what we call pastoral administrators, lay men and women, religious men and women, deacons, who can run a parish while a priest provides the sacramental services for the parish. So while we may face a shortage of priests, I think it's really important to understand that it is not a hopeless situation. There are things that we can do. Those things might require what we call transformative change in our mind and heart about how we run parishes and about how we assign the priests that we do have. There are ways to deal with this and ways that can keep parishes stable, vibrant, and viable. That is an option that we have, a pastoral administrator with respect to parishes. So the reality is we do face a shortage of priests. But as we look to our options, there are options out there that will require us to look a little differently, to share a little differently our gifts and our talents with other parishes. But nonetheless, it is not something that we need to necessarily see as just a negative opportunity for us to deal with. The truth is we are not running parishes like we did in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s or the 90s. Truth is, we are running parishes now in the 21st century, and that will require a very, very different kind of thinking and a very different kind of acting. For Wineskins, I'm Father Nick Shorey from the Diocese of Youngstown.
The feast of the conversion of St. Paul is celebrated tomorrow. To tell us more about this apostle to the Gentiles is Diana Hencharenko. She is pastoral minister at St. Angela Merici Parish in Youngstown.
This feast originated in France at the end of the 6th century, when some relics of the apostle were transferred there. It was not celebrated in Rome until the 11th century, perhaps in connection with the Feast of the Chair of St. Peter, celebrated in France on January 18th. The importance of the conversion of the apostle to the Gentiles is evident from the 3 accounts given in the Acts of the Apostles. It is evident also from the prayers in the Mass and in the Liturgy of the Hours. The biblical account of what happened to Paul on the road to Damascus describes the radical change that took place. He who was formerly persecuting us is now preaching the faith he tried to destroy, as written in the book of Galatians. The apostle himself always contrasts that experience on the road to Damascus with what had preceded it. In legal observance, I was a Pharisee, and so zealous that I persecuted the church. I was above reproach when it came to justice based on the law. But those things I used to consider gain, I have now reappraised as loss in the light of Christ. All that from his letter to the Philippians. But it is not simply a matter of conversion as a personal experience of Paul. It is also a phase of development in the history of the church, as recorded in the book of Acts. St. Luke states, "All except the apostles scattered throughout the countryside of Judea and Samaria." After that, Saul began to harass the church. He entered house after house, dragged men and women out, and threw them in jail. The opening prayer at the Mass is derived from the French Missal, and it contains 2 interrelated themes. The first one presents the dynamics of Paul's conversion and following of Christ. Some have tried to use psychological principles to explain his conversion experience. St. Luke does not describe events in a chronological order, but although it was a case of sudden divine intervention, its meaning was gradually revealed. Thus, in the first account, the incident is made known only to Ananias. In the second account, its significance is revealed to Paul indirectly, through Ananias, and in vague terms. Only in the third account does the risen Christ reveal to Paul the nature and extent of his mission. The second theme of the opening prayer is contained in the phrase, "bearing witness to your truth." But to be a witness to the truth of Christ, like St. Paul, requires that we discover the meaning of faith in the events and experiences of life, both individual and ecclesial. Paul himself, after the dazzling experience on the road to Damascus, spent 3 years in Arabia, southeast of Damascus, in order to grasp fully the specific dimensions of his vocation. There is yet another theme in Pauline spirituality, and it appears especially in the communion antiphon, the third antiphon for evening prayer, and in the office of readings. Christ is the focal point and center of the life of St. Paul. His contact with Christ on the road to Damascus was not only a transforming and crucial experience, it became a primary point of reference for all of his apostolic ministry. Thus, we read in the third antiphon for evening prayer, "For me, life is Christ, and death is gain." And in the communion antiphon, "I live by faith in the Son of God." That transformation on the road to Damascus, which was always in the forefront of his mind, was the source of Paul's theology and spirituality. For Wineskins, I'm Diana Hencharenko.
Joining me now is Nikki Yearling, who is the director of the Newman Center at Youngstown State University. And Nikki, it's such a pleasure to have you on Wineskins today.
Thank you, Father Corda. It's great to be here.
For the folks that are with us, why don't you give us a little background as to who you are, where you're from, so folks can get to know you?
I am currently serving as the director of the Newman Center at Youngstown State University. A little bit about who I am. I originally grew up in Wisconsin. My family and I relocated here 4 years ago to take this job. So it's been kind of an adventure for us moving to Ohio. Had a lot of fun. A little bit about my education, I guess. I have a bachelor's degree in English, and then I studied theology at the University of Dayton, so I hold a master's in theological studies, which really just helps me to have a little bit of that background to be able to serve our students, faculty, and staff.
What do you like best about what you do? You know, you come into contact not only with the students, but obviously with faculty and with ministers of different faiths. What is most exciting for you about your job?
I think my favorite moments are seeing the light bulb go on for students. So those moments where they really realize that their faith is theirs, their faith is their own, that they can live it out. And oftentimes there's these moments, I think specifically they tend to happen on retreat is when I tend to see them happen the most. And students just get this aha moment. And it's my favorite part of ministry. It's what keeps me going and keeps me in campus ministry in particular.
You know, oftentimes when we talk about college and faith and college and religion, you know, and if you talk to someone who's a student in university and you ask about their religion, they'll tell you more about their spirituality as opposed to their religion. Why is that, and is that significant?
Yeah, I think some of the trends that are out there are certainly a little daunting. There's a movement to I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. I don't necessarily want to identify as, which is a little, like I said, it's a little daunting. I think we're seeing that movement now. I'm kind of conjecturing. I'd have to have a conversation, with some of my students about it. But I don't think they want the stigma of, what happens if I say I'm Catholic? What happens if I say I'm, really any distinct religion? And so I think there's a little bit of that and a little bit of, I'm not sure I want to commit yet. I think I see a lot of students that aren't just quite ready to jump into things. But, I see a lot of students that are too. So, and that for me is the joy, is that I think sometimes when I'm talking to people, they have kind of this negative opinion of young adults and their faith life. But I would love for them to come and experience some of my students and their joy and their vibrance and their excitement around their faith life.
What's interesting is that while they may not say that I'm a particular religion, their faith is certainly exhibited in their actions. And so there are certainly people of service, people who respect other people. And that is very evident, not just at Youngstown State, but I think in campuses across the country. And why is that so important for them to be people who respect other people?
Yeah, I think that's huge, learning how to respect other people, learning how to be people who serve. And I know we see Youngstown State, and I know this is also true across the nation, is that millennials come out in droves to serve. What's fabulous, we had a young gentleman who called. He's kind of homebound the other day, and I had students say, of course we'll go pick him up and bring him to, the grocery store every week. And they do, week in and week out. And it's beautiful. And I think what they're learning is, one, the value of the human dignity of a person. I don't think they articulate it that way, but they're certainly learning it, and they certainly believe it. It's fun to kind of watch them grow in that way, and to use service really as a vehicle for helping them understand their faith and to use it as a gateway to, I'm connected to the larger church, and this is why service is an important component of my faith. So I think sometimes there's a little translation piece that we can do as ministers for the young adults who, and particularly the campus young adults who want to be involved in service. But yes, they certainly love that. And it's a way for them to respect each other.
I'm wondering sometimes why us adults have a little difficulty sometimes with people that are that age, that are college students. There's kind of like an intimidation, like that we're afraid of them or they're afraid of us. But I think when all is said and done, I think there's a mutual respect that's probably there. It's just kind of trying to break down those walls. What, in your experience, can an older, more seasoned adult do in approaching young people, especially in a college setting?
I really think it's just being friendly, saying hello. I think that's sometimes the easiest thing to do, to notice their presence at Mass. Hey, it's so great to see you here is such a welcoming phrase. It's just a way to start conversation. I think sometimes we get a little maybe nervous around, because the generations are so different, especially with the onset of technology and how, all this has developed, and a lot of our young adults are really, really attached to their technology. And sometimes that can seem a little daunting, or maybe you think they're too busy on their phone to even pay attention. But I think just simply noticing their presence is huge. And I would say too, I know that my young adults have a deep appreciation for those who are active in their churches and who have stayed active. My young women started a group a couple years ago now. It's called LOCLIT, and it stands for Little Old Church Ladies in Training. And so for them, that's what they aspire to be. They want to be like the little old ladies who are at church every day and who give their lives in such deep service to everything that's happening. They're that hubbub in the church. They really want to be like that. And so I think just knowing that too, that there's kind of that deep desire is an understanding that there really is that mutual respect.
One of the things that came to mind when you were just mentioning that is, oftentimes we older adults like to say that young people are our future, but young people are our present as well. And how important it is for us as more seasoned adults to understand those who are going through struggles within their young adult life, how important it is for us to understand that they are as much a part of who we are as they are our future. What can you tell the folks that are with us about understanding a little more intensely that young people are the present as well as the future?
I think the biggest thing is to just give the young adults a chance. Invite them to partner with you. I think that's the biggest thing. One, I think young adults want to be heard in the worst way, and I think particularly in your 20s, the 20s are a lot about finding your identity. And we have to open up a space to allow young adults to find their identity in church. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can offer for young adults. And I think sometimes that means saying, hey, I'm working on this big dinner, and I think that you have some skills that would really lend themselves to this, and just allowing them to be a part of that with you, to shadow you and to see, the ins and outs of what it is you're doing. And I think it also means that we as adults have to be willing to say, I might have to hand this over, and allow the young adults to really grow into that ministry, and listen to what some of their new and crazy ideas are as well. So,
Nikki, in closing, any significant things that you'd like to mention, particularly about the Newman Center before we close?
It's such an exciting ministry. It's a place to be where there's always growth and excitement, and there's always just moments of students recognizing, this is my faith. This is how I live my faith. And I think to me, it's just one of the most beautiful times to really see students come to that adult understanding of their faith.
Well, Nikki Erling, we appreciate your presence here on Wineskins, and we continue to wish you well in your ministry as a director there of the Newman Center. And we know that what you do for the young people there is not only significant, but certainly has lasting effects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Corda. To receive more information on that and other issues, and to listen to Wineskins, visit the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown at www.doi.org. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Pope Francis reminds consecrated persons that the first thing for a disciple is to be with the Master, to listen to him and to learn from him. If the warmth of God, his love, his tenderness is not in our hearts, then how can we, who are poor sinners, warm the hearts of others? The more the mission calls you to go out to the margins of existence, says Pope Francis, let your heart be more closely united to Christ's heart, full of mercy and love. When reflecting on this world of distrust, discouragement, and depression, Pope Francis looks to consecrated persons to introduce belief in the possibility of true happiness, in the feasibility of hope that does not depend solely on talent, superiority, or knowledge, but on God. All are given the possibility of encountering Him, if only they seek Him with a sincere heart.
The Johnsons enjoy Friday dinners out, nothing fancy, just time together to reconnect as family. They make sure others eat as well. By giving to Catholic Charities of Youngstown, the Johnsons join other angels who care for those in need, regardless of religion or race. Show your wings with a gift to Catholic Charities, changing lives one family at a time, providing housing, emergency financial assistance, senior services, and more. Give now at ccdoi.org.
By the time we can walk, each of us yearns for the joy that comes from being able to do for ourselves. Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy. Church World Service.
Our song today is by Lorraine Hess. It is from her CD entitled Child of God. It is available through World Library Publications and iTunes.
Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me. Soul of Christ, oh sanctify me. Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me. Permit me not to separate from thee, from the wicked foe. Defend me. Soul of Christ, oh sanctify me. Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me. At the hour of my death, call me, and bid that I might come to thee, that with thy saints I may praise thee forever and ever. Soul of Christ, oh sanctify me. Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me. Soul of Christ, sanctify me. Body of Christ, save me. Blood of Christ, inebriate me. Inebriate me. Inebriate me.
Our scripture reflections for this third Sunday in Ordinary Time will be by Father Sean Conaboy. He is pastor of Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Camel.
We have recently begun the Jubilee Year of Mercy. Pope Francis is inviting us to live more fully the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. We are being invited to share with all, Christians and non-Christians. We are being invited to share with all the love, the mercy of God. There is a long tradition of Jubilee years. The last one celebrated by the Church was the year 2000, and the effects of that celebration can still be heard today as people relate to their experiences from that year. The first Jubilee year in the Catholic Church was in the year 1300. It was not a time of great prosperity and confidence in the future, and despite the darkness of the age, the Pope called for a year committed to the future. And this hope for the future is what marked the Jubilee years from ancient Israelite history. When Jesus reads from the scroll, as we hear in the Gospel today, he reads the proclamation that this is a year of favor from the Lord. The year of favor that Isaiah proclaims is one that is promised after the people have grown tired, the land has been taxed, financial and social strains are present. Yet, in the face of that, Isaiah says that this is a year of favor. The needs of the lowly will be met. Certainly the people of Jesus' time knew oppression and fatigue. Certainly the situation was right for a Jubilee year, was right for the renewal that is promised in a Jubilee year. Yet as we hear in the Gospel, the people cast Jesus out. He was faced with opposition. Perhaps even worse, he was faced with complacency and unwillingness to be different. Yet even in the face of opposition and complacency, Jesus sees a time of exceptional blessing. Today this passage is fulfilled in your hearing, he says. Jesus sees possibility where others do not. And that's the point of a Jubilee year. St. Paul today describes the people of God as a body. All of us are members of the body of Christ. We each have different roles, and St. Paul helps us understand how those roles work together. Some members are hurting. It may only be something as innocuous as a paper cut or a stubbed toe, but we know how crippling those injuries can be. Some members are in opposition to growth. They challenge the possibility of new life, the demands of truth. And some members are complacent, content with their spiritual growth and the practice of their faith. Again, because we are all connected, the hurt, opposition, complacency all threaten to claim the attention of the whole body. But this is a year of favor from our God. We know the gratifying effects of sitting in a comfortable chair after hard work and the joy of eating a good meal. We know the ability of some satisfaction to serve the whole body, and that is what we are called to be. Like Jesus, like St. Paul, like Ezra in the first reading, we stare into the darkness of hurt, opposition, and complacency, and we bring the promise of God's favor. To help all of the members of Christ's body, we bring joy, healing, life, and mercy. This is a year of favor from our God. Today is holy to the Lord. Today, this year, we can overcome the divisions that the body of Christ experiences, that the whole world experiences. We can look at each other and say, today this passage is fulfilled in your hearing. The needs of the lowly will be met. For Wineskins, I'm Father Sean Conaboy.
History, biography, and good fiction all will demonstrate that the only fulfilled people of this earth have been those who lived to serve the common good. We all have that ability. It is a gift from God. Take it and use it to help another person. That is the primary reason for our living. Wineskins is made possible by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. The program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda, wishing you a blessed Sunday and a safe week.